I don't know if it's even going to work on this screen. Live. Check. Mic. Check. We're on. Okay, Facebook. I trust you. What's up, guys? Yo, yo, yo. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. It's the last day, guys. It's the last day. The last supper. It's been a 20-day ride for all the fellas in the group. It's been a lot of content, obviously, so understand that you guys can go back through the content at any time. And if you guys haven't seen the survey on the group page by now, I will post it again and I'll mention it in the closing meeting tonight. But if anybody would just take a couple minutes to fill out the survey, how'd we do? What could we do better next time? We'll send you the link to the free PDF. It's 28 pages, guys, of just the links from the 20 days, all the information, all the resources, all the links that you have in the retreat Facebook group. It's a little bit jumbled. I know there's a lot of content there. It's hard to really absorb it all or even be able to see it all. But this doc, you can go from top to bottom, day 1 to day 20. It has every link right there for you, basically, just chapter by chapter. So all you guys got to do is fill out that survey, and at the end of the survey, it'll automatically pop up a link and email you a link that you guys can click to download that. So that's more of what we'll talk about in the meeting. For everybody else tuning in, what's up, guys? Welcome. We've got one more interview for you, and today my spotlight guest is my roommate, my longtime friend, Ryan Averhart, and he's been the man behind the camera for all you guys in the retreat. He's the one that's been following me around every day and getting all the footage, so I figured you guys would like a little bit of engagement with him. You guys get to know him, and then for everybody else, this is just another great story to encapsulate what we've been talking about, which is the power of practice and being a leader of one. And Ryan's a really good example of that because, like myself, I am also a spitting image of how anybody can do this, guys. You know, if we can do it, anybody can. That's a fact. And so I just wanted to bring Ryan on and let you guys in the group get to know him, and for anybody else who doesn't know him, give you guys a little bit of a backstory on Ryan and his journey, and then we can talk a little bit about the future of where we see Henosis going. So thanks for jumping on here with me, buddy.
Yeah, brother. Appreciate you, man.
So if you want to start off just, with that idea of the power of practice, looking, through everything that, we always talk about and what we've been going over in the retreat regarding consistency being the mother of mastery, and journaling and commitment and just practice. What has that been like for you? When did this start? When did this desire start in you to transform your life?
Yeah, man. So it's actually funny. It's been just about 2 years. I was looking back at some memories and some posts on Instagram, and it was August 6th is actually when I first started jerfing. So I've known John for a while. We went to Wazoo together, Washington State, go Cougs. We're in the same fraternity, so we used to get a little wild together. And I continued that same process after I graduated. So it was still 2-3 years after college, and I was still partying like I was in a fraternity. And all that caught up to me. So I decided to reach out to John, still followed him on social media. We still kept in contact here and there. And I decided to reach out to him. I shot him a DM on Facebook. I was like, hey, buddy, I really need some help. I really want to get healthy. Can you help me? Like, I've never worked out before, never had any interest really in nutrition. I knew how to cook and things like that, but just very baseline. Didn't have any idea of what I was doing, and I really needed some help. If it was going to be anybody, it was going to be John, for sure. So I reached out to John. I'm like, I really need some help, bro. And he hit me back. I was like, okay, well, where do you want to start? How healthy do you want to be? And I was like, I want to be completely healthy. Let's do a complete overhaul. So we started working together. We started with nutrition. He sent me basically a grocery list of all the things that were JERF, just eat real food. I know you've heard that many, many times through John, just eat real food. So whole organic food, we got started on that. Did that for a week before I even started training, physical training with him. And just the impact of that first week was monumental. I saw the changes in my body, the changes in my mind just right away, and started building off that. Then we started.
What kind of changes, like, if you were to break that down?
Yeah, absolutely. So.
And what did we do specifically regarding that? Like, just eat real food. What else? What else did we go over?
So it started just with the nutrition and the not so much portion control. The main thing that John was focusing on me with was just removing all processed foods from your diet. Just don't worry about counting your macros or your calories and all that.
Get it
just,
out of the house.
Just remove all the garbage from your cupboards, like flat out. And that was a kind of a challenging thing for me because I'm like, well, I go to Starbucks every day. I get this double mocha frappuccino. He's like, well, you're gonna have to stop drinking that if you want to be healthy. So just removing all the junk from my diet. And I did that. Started going to Trader Joe's in Seattle and just started getting all the jerky food. All organic grass-fed meats, free-range chickens, just the whole gamut of organic food. And that was an alarm to my body. I even remember sending messages to John like, hey, what's going on? And he said, your body's at war, man. Like, it's getting rid of all of the toxins. I mean, for the first week, it was a struggle. My stomach, I was shitting all the time, and, I was feeling kind of sick, but it was just the detox process that started. So I remember just kind of reflecting on that, like, okay, and that lasted for a few weeks. That was a big thing. And then I just continued to follow down that rabbit hole of, okay, this works, this doesn't. I'm enjoying this food, I'm not enjoying that. Removing gluten was a huge thing for me. And processed sugars. Gluten and processed sugars and alcohol, of course, were the three main things, and drugs, or the four main things that were just killing me. And by removing them, I started to feel more clarity, like instantly, like the brain fog that people talk about, real thing. The lethargy, I started having more energy, and this was just in a week or two of just eating real food and removing the garbage from my diet.
If you were to go into those, the top four, as much as you want for each of those four categories, but what are some, like, very specific examples for people out there that are like, we talked about this yesterday, Miles and I eat healthy. Mm-hmm. And then you realize, wait a second, maybe I wasn't eating healthy. So what are those things in that category? And obviously the fourth one you can go into as much as you want with your own experience. But specifically with those categories, what are those things that were like, that was gluten, but what things were you eating that had gluten in it? Because you weren't eating like a gluten bar. Right? What are those? What are those things?
Bread, for sure. Okay. I was eating a ton of bread.
What kind of bread? Because what are people buying that are causing them to have the problems that you had, and they're not aware, just like you weren't aware?
White bread, for sure. Mm-hmm. Flour-enriched white bread. Even the whole grain bread that they say is good for you. The Dave's Killer Bread or whatever, whole grain. I thought just because it was labeled healthy or organic or heart healthy, it's not. It's not. Refined sugars, just white sugar, pure white sugar. I was putting that in my coffee. I was putting that in dishes. That was a killer right there. I was eating a lot of like oat bars, just full of gluten. Things, not necessarily it was the oats, but just the processed energy bars or the processed health bars, those type of things that were killing me, man. And then a lot of pastas I was eating. Once again, that enriched flour products. And then the conventional meat products, those were killing me as well. Because I even remember us telling John, well, I eat pretty healthy. It was just because I was cooking on a regular basis. Doesn't mean I was eating healthy. I was cooking my food in canola oil, smothering it in, vegetable oils and things like that. Canola oil is essentially machine oil. They put that in machines to help keep the gears lubed and things like that. And we're putting that in our body. We're ingesting that. all these different chemicals, all these different dyes that were in sodas. I was drinking a lot of soda, a lot of juices. I mean, if you look at the labels on a juice or even on an energy drink, I was looking at a Monster energy drink the other day, 54 grams of sugar in one serving, and I was down in 1 or 2 of those a day, man. You know, outside of the chemicals in the dyes that are in that, all that sugar at one time, you know, that's just asking for sickness, asking for dis-ease, you know. So those are some of the main things that I was eating on a regular basis. Candy, you know, processed Reese's Pieces and things like that, Snickers bars. And I was just like eating this stuff at my desk, at work, sitting stationary all day. And, you know, it really hit me when I looked down and my buttons were bulging on my shirt, man. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting there, not even moving, and I'm sweating, like breaking out into these, you know, pouring sweat from doing nothing. You know, it's like, what the hell's going on here? There's got to be something that can be done about this. Yeah. So those are definitely a lot of the food products that I was eating that were causing me dis-ease.
And most people too, like, there's a level of awareness that knows it's not good for you, but also, you know, if you could kind of elaborate, what did it look like removing those things, and what thoughts did you have, you know, what epiphanies did you have in the process of, because you don't just hear, okay, stop eating all the processed food and then download that megabyte of information that you just said, but that's all the stuff that you learn along the way. But what does that learning process look like the first couple steps of like, holy shit, everything I'm eating is actually not good for me? You know, what were some of those practical things that, like, for example, I saw this?
Yeah, like I was saying, brain fog, huge thing. I would wake up in the morning and I would just feel better. You know what I mean? And I would go down and I would make my food. You know, usually in the morning when I was making breakfast, I usually didn't even eat breakfast. But now I would wake up and I would grab like a cup or two of Siggy's, which is a great grass-fed yogurt, and just throw some raw berries in there and some nuts or something like that. And it was just nourishing. I felt nourished. I felt the energy that the food was providing me. Before, it was just like a quick boost and then a crash from like all the sugar. I would hit a wall. Even before I would get to work, I would be like in transit to work and I would already feel coming down, instead of the sustained energy that I felt after eating this nourishing whole food, you know. Started realizing the power of food. Let food be thy medicine. I started realizing, oh, this is great for me. And I think, well, I know that removing the bread was huge for me, because when I started eating, you know, burgers and things without buns, because I would just make the burgers at home, a little bit of cheese, sauerkraut, whatever, and just eat it bunless, you know, with a side salad, I could feel literally the life force nourishing me. And like I said, that sustained energy after eating those meals, instead of eating just like a burger from McDonald's and feeling like shit for the rest of the day. You could feel the difference in the energy levels. You can feel the mood changes, the mood swings. They weren't there anymore. You know, I would wake up and I would be mad at the world, but just by switching my diet, and this was before the physical practice even got deep, the food and the nutrition just was a huge reset, man. And that's like the weight started falling off in the first few weeks, the first month. And I'm like, shit, there's got to be more to this. So I started refining my diet, and that's something that I still do. I refine my diet constantly, trying to find what's best for me right now, right here, because that may be different in a month from now.
How does that look on day one versus now? What were the first things you did and journaled and observed, and what are the most relevant things in the recent past?
As far as food?
Yeah, or whatever.
I mean, the most relevant things, like we said, is just removing all the garbage from my diet, you know?
Well, yeah, what were your garbage go-tos? You know, of like what, and because it's not like, oh, I'm done with that forever. Like, there's conditioned habits where it's like, fuck, I really want that soda today.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so the cravings were definitely there because, like, you know, we know we're creatures of habit. And I was in a very stagnant state in my life at that time. So it was the same thing. Wake up, get ready for work, go to work, eat junk, a lot of Uber Eats, you know. And I would every day around, you know, 12, 1 o'clock, it was like, oh, I want that Uber Eats. I want that burrito from Tapatio's or whatever the case may be. And when I started replacing that junk with the whole foods.
What were your go-to replacements? You know,
Yeah, so I started actually making this.
the devil's in the details, guys.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're just gonna say, "Oh, he did it, but I can't do it." But if he gives you specific examples of how he transformed his life, copy and paste.
Yeah. So crockpot was like my biggest fan for sure. Like I would make this chicken potato stew every single day. I
Where'd
made
you
it
get that?
made it for 5 months, guys. 5 months every single day, and I would eat that for lunch. It was one of John's recipes from his Upgrade Your Nutrition course.
I want you to
recommended.
actually explain that to them. Too,
Yes,
because
yes.
that's what I was trying to allude to earlier. Is like, what did that formal process of
Yeah.
you look like? Of learning, like, where did you begin? What template
Gotcha.
did you use?
Gotcha. Yeah. So I used John's Upgrade Your Nutrition course. And like you said before, I was like, oh, I eat healthy. I know how to cook. I know what I'm doing. But I know how to cook, but I wasn't cooking the right things. You know, I was not paying attention closely to what was nourishing me, what was good for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I started going down that rabbit hole, and I was following these recipes that John has. And one of them, my favorite one still even to this day, was this chicken potato stew. Really easy. I would take, and it's a meal prep recipe, so it would last.
That's the one we made for the day 14 meal prep when we did it in the Instant Pot. Same exact recipe he's talking about.
I would take 2 or 3 packs of chicken, chop it up super small, throw it in the crock pot with the homies, some organic bone broth, chicken bone broth. Chop up a couple potatoes, chop up some carrots, celery, and you can play with this. I would modify it every week. Sometimes it would be like turmeric ginger chicken, or it would be garlic leeks, just different kinds of things. But it was that same stew every day, and I would have like a huge heaping bowl of that at work, and I would just be ready to ravage the day, dude. Like, the second half of the day after I ate that, it's like, let's go. It gave me that boost that I needed, and it was filling and nourishing, and it really sustained me. And I continued to eat that every single day. And then I would get home and I would make like a ground beef stir fry, and I would throw some kale in there, some zucchini, whatever the case is. Just I had a whole list, a grocery list of all these things that John had on there. And he broke it down in fats and, healthy sugars and proteins, carbs, all those different things, but not having me focus on how much of those things I'm eating, but just here, eat anything off this list, And that's what I started doing, and just playing with different things. Oh, I like this. I really don't like that. I'm not going to eat that anymore. I'm going to eat more of this. And just eating fruits. Like I replaced Snickers and all that garbage with bananas and oranges. Every time I had like a little craving, I would bring like this little container of trail mix to work with me, this homemade trail mix. It was like almonds, banana chips, little pieces of like 100% raw cacao nibs, and all these things that would give me that little sweet indulgence, but would still be really healthy for me. Apricots was a really big thing that I really loved. The Turkish dried apricots you get from Trader Joe's. I would just annihilate those things and not feel bad about it, and feel good after eating them. And then I would have those conversations with John, like, oh, I think I might be eating too much fruit. No, don't worry about that right now. You're jerfing, you're enjoying, you're transitioning. Keep doing what you're doing. We'll refine those portions and the amounts later. And then after I got acclimated to all that, my body said, okay, I like what we're doing here. Then we started to refine a little bit. Okay, let's not eat 7 bananas in one day. Let's eat 1 and 1 orange, or whatever the case is. So
that was definitely one of the things that. What? 2 questions.
Yep.
What else from Upgrade Your Nutrition was applicable that you learned as takeaways? Like if you were to look back at those modules, we can kind of go through them. But if there were things that were like, oh, okay, now that makes more sense now. Like the recipes are there, but was there anything that gave you some of that kind of data validation, especially module 1, 2, 3, where it's just more informational and you're doing the worksheets and filling out the numbers? What else was in there? For as far as like, were there any other, maybe not, but were there any other kind of like baseline foundational learning moments that you had about nutrition that you didn't have before going into that with that that course.
Yeah, absolutely. What gets measured gets results, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was just me diligently tracking my, not necessarily, like I said, the food intake, but just what I was eating and how I reacted to that. And I was still eating, great example, I was still eating a lot of lectins. I was still eating a lot of nightshades. And for those of you who don't know, like tomatoes, nightshades, peppers have a lot of lectins in them. Lectin is a sticky plant protein that causes inflammation in the gut, causes it pokes holes in your small intestine and allows toxins and other things to leak out into the bloodstream. And I was still eating a lot of things like that, and I was still feeling that GI discomfort. And we had a conversation around lectins. You introduced me to Dr. Stephen Gundry, and I started kind of following his quote unquote protocol, but then removed a lot of the lectins and was able to see the results in the, oh, I don't have that GI discomfort anymore. I don't have that bloating. I don't have that pain. So that was a huge thing for me. Beans, you know.
I think that's such a huge conversation too, because I think the statistic is something like 80 to 90% of people suffer from some form of gastrointestinal discomfort. That's not normal, guys. Like, the human system isn't meant to be in pain and dysfunctioning. You know, if your check engine light goes on, you take it to the shop, and you know, it just depends on who you are, on how you react to certain things. Some people can handle lectins fine. It's really a spectrum thing. Some people can handle a little, some people can handle a lot, some people can't handle any at all. And that's really the case with a lot of things. But if you don't track that stuff, how you know? And you got to be diligent with that, going back over your notes and seeing, like, how did I feel over the last 72 hours? How did I feel over the last 7 days? Mm-hmm. And the little things, you know, like you said, at square one, when you're like, okay, well, I just got to stop drinking soda, whatever that is. Like we talked about on the podcast with Miles, is plug the biggest hole that's causing the biggest problem. You know, get rid of the one or two things that are, you know, drugs, for example, or, you know, whatever it is, the starting point for a lot of people, it's food, sugar, pop, you know, soda, whatever that is. Find that one thing that you can pause that's causing the biggest problem, and then just the littlest steps that you can make to build your way up from there. It's a learning curve. And so diving more into, you know, the different things about, you know, layering in now, for example, like just finishing up our conversation, those are some of the early changes you made. What are some of the things now? Like you said, there's different layers. In the beginning, it was just, let's just eat real food. Now, what are some kind of things that are relevant in your experience that have come up regarding nutrition over the last 6 months versus the first 6 months?
Yeah, absolutely. So sugar is still a big thing. I still love my sweeties. I love my sweet treats. But that is something that I would say the biggest thing right now is balance. Just having balance in my diet and not overdoing certain things, because I still, like I said, love sweets, but just really dialing that down to especially fruits, because I replaced, you know, all those sweet treats with fruits, and noticing what fruits are good for me or what fruits agree with me. And I do really well with just citrus, so I remove like the bananas and a lot of the other, as much as I love them, exotic fruits that are here on island, they're not so great for me. They don't make me feel optimal when I eat them, especially as far as like the bloating in the gut and the inflammation they cause. So I really pay attention to that. So just dialing that in and eating more citrus fruits has been a huge thing for me. A lot of lettuce, a lot of sprouts. Those really, I do really well with that. Not so much of the, I don't do so well with kale anymore. I noticed that. So I've kind of dialed back on that. Yeah, and then the carbs as well. I used to eat a lot of rice, but now I'm down to like maybe one pot of rice a week instead of one pot of rice a day, when I can really notice a huge difference in my, the way my gut reacts to that, the bloating and the inflammation there. And just coffee, sugars, any things like that. I'm really sensitive to stimulants, so just making sure that I keep an eye on how much I'm consuming in one day and not overdoing it has been crucial to progressing on my nutrition path.
What does that look like if you're to objectively, you know, for someone else listening, you know, what does balance look like? If it's for you as a personal example, great, but you know, just what what's the goal behind bringing more balance into that?
Just to have a more holistic life, to be able to, for me, balance is just watching your consumption, knowing that, if you eat too much of one thing, it's going to cause this. So by dialing it back and knowing that I'm only going to eat one banana or two bananas for the entire day instead of four or five, knowing that that will make me feel more optimal than eating five or six, if that makes sense, if that was what you're looking for.
Yeah, well, what do you mean more optimal?
Like I said before, I'm really, really sensitive to sugar. So if I eat a lot of sugar, I can feel it in my body. Like I start to get the jitters. I start to move a lot faster, even sometimes sweat. I'll start beating up with the sweat on the forehead. The heart will start pumping faster. So I notice those things if I'm eating even too much fruit. So by dialing that back, I'm much more constant, much more stable throughout the day.
And how does that help you?
And it helps me to stay on task, to focus, interact with people better, just being more grounded and centered throughout the day instead of being so up in the air. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, just, I mean, like that, if you were to break that down of like 5 most common symptoms of people that feel unhealthy, like you'll hear a lot of the buzzwords and a lot of people's similar stories, and that's why I really like to highlight Ryan as an example, because he took himself from that situation where he realized that he was on a track to dis-ease, poor health, and then he implemented simple strategies and now can speak from a point of direct experience to show through his example that it's just implementing little changes consistently. Pareto's principle, 80-20, like we talked about on here, the basics, the fundamentals, the foundation that you build, that's where the magic happens, because then it doesn't matter about how fast you get there. It's just you're already there essentially. If you're doing it on day one, you just keep getting better and better and better at doing it as you go.
Absolutely.
What else, taking a step from the nutrition pillar, what are the other things in the very beginning that were where we started? What was the next kind of homework and follow through with what we did after diving into nutrition?
Yeah, so after nutrition, we just started moving the body.
Body weight. Break that down as specifically as you can. Devil in the details.
Yeah. So body weight exercises was the first 5 months of us working together, which consisted of no weights, no bands, just me moving my body and using the weight of my body as resistance, I guess you could say. So we started with a lot of mobility work, which was just me moving my joints and warming the joints up every single day.
What kind of stuff would that be?
Yeah, so there was a lot of controlled articular rotations, small, slow movement of the joints in a very meticulous fashion. So starting like at the bottom and moving your way up to the top, starting with the ankle, then the knees, then the hips, then the shoulders, then the neck. That was like part of my daily movement hygiene. A lot of you may be familiar with that term through John. And then I would do a 45 to 50 minute body weight circuit, which a lot of it consisted of push-ups and scapular push-ups, a lot of yoga moves, downward dog, started doing pigeon poses, just things to move and stretch and get my body moving. And granted, I never, I worked out a little bit in college for like a semester, right? So I had absolutely no clue how to effectively and efficiently move my body. There was just so much more to it than I could even think of. And without John's help, I wouldn't have been able to optimally get myself in motion, because you see people, at the gym and they're just going ham with the dumbbells and stuff, but there's no form there. And it's like, dude, you're wrecking your body, And John was like, let's just do this right. let's build this foundation firm and strong and build from the ground up. We have all the time in the world. Let's get you there first. So there was no emphasis on, come on, man, we got to get you there. We got to get you there. It's let's build this foundation and get you there right. And that was a big thing for me, you know. And it's like in the beginning, I was like, fuck, I just want to lift weights. I want to get swole. I want to get jacked. But now I look back at it like, dude, that was the best thing for me, was to start out with that, just getting to know my body, getting to know myself, you know, by me diving into those, you know, movement hygienes and just moving my arm overhead and overhead reach and forward fold and, you know, things like that. It seems simple and it seems like redundant and it seems minuscule and you're like, okay, I did my movement hygiene today, but then a month later you're like, fuck, dude. I remember just looking back at the notes, it's like, I can touch my toes, John. I can, you know, reach behind me. It's like shit that I could never do. I can breathe.
Yeah.
I can walk up the stairs without sweating. I'm standing up at my desk instead of sitting down for 9 hours a day. It's like I'm doing all these little, you know, life hacks and tricks. I'm sitting on the bus and I'm doing my cars, my controlled articular rotations. I'm sitting up straight. I'm pulling the shoulders back, clipping the ribs down, reaching up through the crown of the head. It's like all these small things, all these little details that I never paid attention to before. It's like become a part of your everyday life. And it's like, okay, what can I do to optimize myself today? What can I do to bring more vitality and energy into my life today? So it becomes almost like a game. It is a game. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, what can I do to be better today? Mm-hmm. And that's how I start. That's when it started unfolding, dude. After the first month, it was like, it's like I unzipped, like you see the cartoons where they unzip the costume and step out of themselves. That's what it was like. I shed that first layer and it's like more and more and more and more and more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And especially considering too, you know, your commitment from day one, it allowed you to see really good results early on, which is even more motivating. And another reason why it's so important to do assessments, to just be able to go back and, because everybody's got those shitty days, guys. Like even professional Mr. Olympia bodybuilders don't want to go to the gym sometimes, you know, and being able to track progress and look back and be like, holy cow, I've made it a long way. That enough can be that little nugget of inspiration that you need on that day to get you going, to keep chasing, to keep growing, whatever it may be. And, you know, if you could even, you know, just kind of continue that process of evolution of what that looked like for you. Say, you know, what results did you have at month 1 and then, you know, at month 6, and what were some of those kind of highlight markers along that path, the first, you know, 6 months of training, kind of going into your process of going into Phoenix?
Yeah. So the first thing I noticed, like I said, was just the increased energy levels and the brain fog was gone, because I used to wake up in the morning and just reflecting on this, it sits heavy, you know, in my heart, but I used to wake up every single day and say, I hate my life. I used to say that every single fucking day, man. And it's hard to think back on that, but I don't regret it. But I used to wake up every morning when I lived in Seattle and I'd say, I hate my life. And that would follow me through. It's like I had this dark cloud over my head every day. And it was just like I would look for reasons to piss people off or start arguments with people at work. Not like full on like yelling matches, but I would like go against what people were saying just to be a renegade. Like, no, that's not right because of this or whatever. And instead of working cohesively with people, I would, you know, try and be the one to stand out and cause a scene. And slowly I realized I didn't have that attitude anymore. I would wake up in the morning and I'm like, all right, let's go do the movement hygiene. You know, let's go move the body. And then it's like, you're going to make this super dank jerky smoothie. And then, you know, you got some time just to kind of watch a show or something before work. And it's like, I'm getting this time back. I have more time now because I'm not sleeping until it's 30 minutes before me to leave. You know, I'm waking up 3-4 hours before I even have to leave the house, and I have all this time for me. And then slowly I started waking up in the morning, and that I hate my life wasn't there anymore. It wasn't that I'm going to say I love my life. It was like, it's just not there. And I realized that I didn't have those feelings, that negative feeling anymore. And then I would go to work and I'd be smiling and I'd be like, hey, what's up? You know, talking to people, feeling back to my old self again before, you know, I was so dependent on drugs and alcohol. And I'm like, I'm seeing something here. I'm feeling something here. And most of this was feeling things I can't even describe were happening. And as I started to unfold, it was the weight started just falling off, man. And I was just like, holy shit, like these shirts, I'm swimming in these shirts that I've had for years now. And I started having to buy new clothes. And then that's when the mindset really started to shift. And I was really like, really longing for more information. So that's when I started reaching out to John, like, hey, give me more links, send me more material to review, give me more homework. And I'm like, okay, read that, give me more, give me more. And that is when the education became my entertainment. There was no more Netflix. There was no more Hulu. And it wasn't because, oh, that stuff's bad. It's like, I don't have space in my life for that because I want to learn. And I am fully engrossed in this educational process that I'm going through. I want to learn more.
It's fun.
It's fun. And when I began to learn more, I'm like, holy shit, there's so much more out there. So it's like the rabbit hole, follow the white rabbit. And you're just, I'm learning all these people. And it's like, I wanted to quote unquote be like them, like Dr. Stephen Gundry, Tom Bilyeu, Aaron Alexander, all these different people, Sean Stevenson, all these great resources that John was giving me. I started following these people, and instead of idolizing quote unquote all these pop stars and these rock stars and these rappers and these athletes, I started wanting to be more like these podcasters and these authors and these physicians and all of these people with all these wealths of knowledge. So I started following that trail and kind of just leaving the other one behind. And like I said, it wasn't because, oh, that's bad and this is good. It's just I don't have an interest in that anymore. And that was, for me, outside of the weight and losing the brain fog and just feeling good, just feeling more optimal, that was the huge mile marker for me. Was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do with my life. When I started really, really, really becoming more in tune with who I was, and those layers and those behaviors and those thoughts, started to fade away. I was like, I can really utilize this as leverage and help people. I can help people. I can serve others through these teachings and these practices by showing people, hey, if I can fucking do it, you can fucking do it. Trust me. This was the guy who was, an alcoholic drug addict for 16 years. I started drinking hard liquor when I was 16 years old. I started doing hard drugs when I was 18. I'm 35 now. I just stopped doing that shit 2 years ago. So if I can do this, and have this huge transformation in just a short amount of time, anybody can do it. And I wanted to utilize that and take all of this information that John was giving me, and it's like I just wanted to give it to the world. So that was a huge, huge monumental mile marker for me, was when the education started, when I started longing for more information and craving more information and reading books and listening to these educational interviews and these lectures and these podcasts. I think that was the biggest thing for me right there, was the education, man. Because the rest of the stuff was like, oh yeah, this is awesome, this is cool. But once I started getting in here and shedding the old system and allowing the new system to come through me, that was it. That was the juice. That was the nectar. That was the fire right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember too, just you telling me about, you're making kombucha and taking it to work, and you're inspiring other people then to get healthy. And that goes to show, like, he was just excited to feel good, and then that excitement was expressed to those he engaged with in his immediate environment. He became excitement, he became happiness, he became healthiness, he became health. And other people saw that, felt that. They're like, what in the fuck did you do, man?
Exactly.
What were your results 6 months in? Like, do you remember, kind of what your numbers were? If
Absolutely.
you could give, like, a objective and subjective assessment at 6 months of basically just 6 months of bodyweight exercise, jerf, a little bit of yoga, and then the education bug came in, started reading a lot more. He got really excited. That was probably like 3-4 months in. And then that took you into, you know, early winter there, like January, February, and kind of like, yeah, what did that look like from there? Kind of like, where were you at 6 months? What was your kind of like assessment point there?
Yeah, so when I first started working with John, I was about 225 pounds, and like I said, I couldn't do anything without breaking into a sweat or just breathing, you know, to catch my breath. So 6 months in, I mean, I had lost about 60 pounds by then, man. 10 pounds a month. I mean, that right there is phenomenal. You know, I had to buy all new clothes, and I was just like super stoked on that. But the movement was better. I was able just to move better and just to walk. I was comfortable in my skin. I was comfortable with who I was, and I had never felt that before in my life. So that in itself was huge. But then just the idea and the creativity started to flow. I had this creative flow and this energy coming through me, like, I want to do this, I want to do that. I don't want to waste my time anymore. I want to create. I had this vision. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew that there was a greater purpose for me, a greater calling, and I started just opening myself up to that, and allowing that information to flow through me. So it was a big transition for me, just being open to new things and trying new avenues of expression. I started drawing and coloring. I started listening to different types of music. I just started spending more time out in nature, which was phenomenal for me. I was in beautiful Pacific Northwest in Seattle. I started spending more time in nature, going on hikes every weekend with our buddy Jer. Shout out to Jer. I see you, bro. We started going on hikes every weekend, and just being outside, man, walking around the neighborhood, breathing in that fresh air. In the winter time, it would, you know, we started getting snow in Seattle, which was unheard of. So we started getting a lot of time off for work at that period of time. And I would just sit out in my backyard and do Wim Hof breathing. And it was just like things that I never thought I would do before that were just had me so entrenched and so involved in myself, not in an egotistical way, but in a loving, you know, I love myself. Let's go deep. Explorative way, man. I was just exploring myself in every way, in movement, in mind, in breath, you know, just allowing the breath to guide me, man. It sounds so simple and it sounds so cliche, but when you drop into the breath, it takes you to a whole nother place, you know, and just learning how to do that and learning how to be comfortable with that and not looking at it like, oh, it's woo woo. I don't know about this woo woo shit, but taking it, the beautiful thing about how John presents this, he presents it in both. He presents you with the woo-woo, but he presents you with the scientific evidence to back that stuff up, and then presents it in his own way. Like, almost making it like, he makes the woo-woo cool, and makes it accessible and digestible to everybody. You know, even though I did have a big interest in the woo-woo, he didn't lay it all out there until I had my moment. I was like, oh shit, this is esoteric as fuck, you know? But it was still every day, do these things and you will feel better, you know?
And I think it's something that's always made sense to me that I think is just an easy way for people to think about it is when it comes to the physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual bodies, the physical body is the vessel and the temple, if you will, and, you know, the temple has to be clean before the light can shine in. Or I like the analogy of a mirror is you have to clean the smudges off the mirror before you can see yourself. And that reminds me of the brain fog. I've always gotten a strong visual image of nutrition allows the veil to thin. It lifts the veil just enough to where you can see, like, it just gives you an opportunity to wake up from the sedation of modern living, which is, you know, really domestication and automation and all these other things. But the beauty is we're dynamic beings. consciousness is always changing and evolving, and as long as we can keep up with that process through practice, then we can continue to mold and flow according to the circumstances however we want, like water in that example. But if we don't do the work, if we don't keep the temple clean, if we don't do those things in the beginning to allow that shift, that different state of being, that different expression to come through you, then you're always going to be fighting an uphill battle. You're always going to make it harder on yourself, especially for those of you out there who have a meditative practice, who have a spiritual practice, or feel some connection to something beyond this physical plane. This is a really interesting stat for you guys. So they did an anonymous survey for scientists and asked them a series of questions related to phenomenal experiences. Phenomena being extra-ordinary, out of ordinary circumstances, non-explainable by the science that we deem as the end-all be-all. Matter is the most fundamental thing in the universe, versus the idea that energy is the prelude to and permeates all of matter. It is matter, and it is the foundation on which all matter has the potential to exist. If you have any kind of connection to that awareness whatsoever through a near-death experience, a psychedelic experience, a meditative experience, a walk through the woods, some people have spontaneous awakening experiences. I can relate to a similar one that was totally out of the fucking blue on like a Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. Weird shit, and then I was different from that day on. And I strongly encourage all of you who have any kind of desire to explore that practice, bringing it back to that scientific study, 50% of scientists admitted to having some unordinary, non-explainable, non-physical experience, some paranormal experience. And those are scientists that are people that you would think, from an outside perspective, it is biased in that sense, because scientists, if good scientists are very open-minded skepticism, right? That's the whole idea, Aristotle. But 50% of scientists, that means half of all scientists are having spiritual experiences they can't explain. And you would think that would be a lesser number. Half, that's like they're like everybody else, right? But you would think like 50% of the scientists, that seems like a high number. It'd probably be like 30% of the scientists. So if 50% of the scientists are having non-ordinary states of consciousness and experiences, then how many of you are? Mm-hmm. How many of us all are? And at a certain point in time, it becomes less about the story attached to that spiritual experience and more about just the experience itself, and that is your own. That's interpreted through your own lens. Two people can see the same thing and have two completely different stories about it. So it's not necessarily about the story or how you explain that experience. It's just the fact that you're open to that experience. You're open to that possibility. You're open to exploring that more. And I promise you, if you desire that, you will have much greater success if you improve the quality of the physical vessel, if you improve the capacity and function of the physical body, if you exercise, move often, load your joints through full ranges of motion, breathe, use that diaphragm, expand, contract, breath retention, get some sunlight, do a little bit of some sort of dance, flow, ecstatic dance, tribal, shamanic, ballet, tango, dance, fun, express movement in a non-linear, non-formal way. Just get good food into your body if you can. Get a tray and grow greens. Like, that's where I started, was 3 years ago. I started growing greens, spinach, and romaine in a little tray under a little LED light on a shelf in my house. And so it's just the idea that if you can put better information in food, and all things engaging with the system is information, right? Epigenetics. Information has an effect on your genetic expression. So if you put good information in, you'll have good information coming out. Input, output. It really is that simple. And so if you're desiring to do work that is involved with energy or, you know, some form of meditative spiritual practice, it's really, really important to make sure that you keep up the health of your physical vessel. And it really is the starting point for a lot of people to allow the thinning and lifting of the veil enough to, I'm not helpless. I'm not a lost cause. I can change, you know, and that is like, that's so beautiful to have people have that. And I can really attest to, I have all of his journal notes. I have all of everything. All the update calls that I get, and I can see him getting the bug. And this is with all clients. This is just a great example because he's really taken it to the greatest capacity that he's able, and followed through in all of those areas. But just consistency, guys. Consistency is the start. Consistency, just doing it every single day. And like he said too, 45-minute body weight workouts, just eating real food, no strict diet or meal plan, 10 pounds a month. That's 2.5 pounds a week, which is at the maximum or even above what the average recommendation is for weight loss. But there's a lot of variables there, so for any of the keyboard warriors. But the idea is that's like extra phenomenal results you would expect from a super really expensive deluxe program and supplement line, and none of that. None of that. Like, let's just get back to the basics of being a human and let the intelligent design that created all of us do its normal job, which is way better than my 30 years of experience, considering human beings have been around for a good 500,000 years. You know, like, let's look at the things that worked there, and especially regarding physical upkeep, nutrition and movement are two of those big ones. And so 6 months of just focusing on the physical, because so many people, how many people out there are like, oh my God, I would fucking kill to lose 50 pounds in 6 months, or 50 pounds in 5 months, 60 pounds in 6 months. And this is, I've had countless clients. Man, I one client, he lost 103 pounds in 10 months. He lost 10 pounds, 11 pounds a month for 10 months straight, every single month. One of my old roommates, same thing. He was having a ton of GI issues, mood disorder, lots of issues. It was pretty bad. He was severe enough to where he was going, getting lightheaded and going and seeing doctors and what have you. And I just, started doing some small nutritional tweaks with him and just cooked food. I just cooked the dinner basically every night and did the shopping for the most part. And he lost 55 pounds in 5 months, It works, guys. Like, it's just a matter of committing to something bigger than yourself and then remaining consistent with it no matter what, and allowing the process to unfold as it does without having any expectations, just observing and documenting along the way. And then you get to a point where you can look back and say, holy moly, like, wow, I'm a different human. And even like your coworkers and your roommates and the people they're noticing, like, oh my God, now you're inspiring me through your actions. And so that was kind of the launching pad for you to then, I'll let you take it over from here. Of the call that I remember, Ryan called me and he goes, I know what I want to do with my life. I want to do this. I want to keep doing this for myself, and then through my actions allow others to be inspired to create change in their lives. And that doesn't necessarily need any fancy degree or certification, especially on day one. It just takes exactly that, the desire, the commitment that he made. He calls me, I'll never forget the call, and he's like, I want to be a holistic health coach. Whatever that looks like, if I get certified in yoga, nutrition, personal training, whatever, I'm just going to start that journey because I've seen the impact it's made on my life, and now I'm starting to see the impact that it's making on other people's lives, and I'm not even all in yet. What if I went all in? What if I actually started to teach this stuff, which would require me to learn it more and dive down the rabbit hole myself more, which would then make me a better person to be able to express myself better, and then that rabbit hole just keeps going. So, take over from there of like what brought you to that decision, and then what's been your experience from that call to now?
Yeah, brother. So I vividly remember that time. At that time, I was full in, man. I was down already. This was 6 months in. I was down 50, 60 pounds. I was feeling it. I was in my truth at that time. And I called John and I was like, dude, this is what I want to do. And he was like, awesome, let's get started with nutrition. And he gave me a couple links. It was like the integrative nutrition um, program, and then John Berardi's precision nutrition. And I started looking at those two, and I was like, okay, this is where I'm going to go with this. And I remember going to work, and that just opened up the rabbit hole. I didn't take either one of those programs, but that got the gears going and encouraged me even more to get the process started. So I remember going to work, and I was doing very well at my job. I was, had gotten 3 promotions in 2 years. I had my own team. I was doing really well, quote unquote well, whatever you want to call that. But I remember going to my boss or my supervisor at the time, and we had our one-on-one meeting, and I said, I just want to let you know that I don't want to take on any more responsibilities outside of my normal duties. I don't want any more promotions. I'm not looking to grow in the company anymore. I am actually just going to focus on my goal of becoming a holistic health practitioner and still work here and give it my all, but just don't load me with any more. She was like, okay, probably just thought it was a phase or whatever, but she's like, okay, I support that. And that is what really got me focused on that. And then I once I made that decision and affirmed that out loud and affirmed that on paper, that was like the magic spell right there. That's when everything else kind of took over, man. Like the things that I can't really quantify with words started happening. That's when I had moved out of my home in Seattle, in actual Seattle, and moved to the outskirts in Renton. So I was away from all of the noise and all of the city life. I was away from the partying. I had been clean and sober for some time now. And that's when the meditation started. And I started just sitting in silence. And every day when I got home from work, I was like so freaking excited to like get home. It was like a kid after school kicking off his clothes. I got to go put on my play clothes and go outside, like kick off my shoes and go in my room, turn the lights off and meditate. And things started happening, things that I can't even describe. And I remember sending notes to John, like, just I feel very mystic right now, and there's just things happening that I've never experienced before. And one morning, I just had a very, very visceral experience, and it was just energy moving through my body, and it was not quantifiable with words. I just knew that I was tapping into some shit that was bigger than me.
What happened in your body? What did you feel?
I felt like
hot, cold.
Yeah, so I felt like I was pulling energy from the sky and moving it down through my body. So it was almost like this electrical feeling, like an electrical current running down the center of my body, and each one of my energy centers just opening. Like I had this like throbbing feeling, especially in my chest, and it was just like an explosion almost, that was happening right in my heart center and in the rest of like my chakras, quote unquote, but energy centers. And it was just energy flowing from the base of my spine up to the crown of my head and down. It was just like this continuous loop of energy. And my eyes were just like saucers, dude, And I remember sending you a picture that morning. I was on my way to work. I'm like, bro, I don't even know how to describe it. I'm like in this state of bliss, And I just went to work, and it was funny because we had a huge work party that night. It was just like free booze and all kinds of shit, and I didn't eat any of the food. I didn't drink, but I was just dancing, and people were like, dude, we know you don't drink anymore. Like, what are you on? Like, I'm not on nothing, bro. I'm on life, And that was a huge turning point for me. And I actually got offered to go to Phoenix for 2 weeks. Went to Phoenix for 2 weeks for work to go help with a new site that they had there. And I was, given a nice hotel room, and I had my phone on airplane mode for 2 weeks. So no distractions. I would go to the office for, 7-8 hours a day, whatever, and then come back to the hotel. And there was this beautiful park outside of the hotel. And I spent most of my time, the whole 2 weeks, in that park. And it was just, I was in, the best way for me to describe it, I was like in the earth, in the land. And I felt so connected to every single person, every single being, every single animal, every piece of rock. Like, I just started to realize this interconnectedness between everything, and realizing that, yes, we're all individual and we're all different, but we're all one. We all come from the same source. And that is when the deep spiritual thirst or longing started to come. Like, okay, I get the nutrition, I get the movement, but there's something there that can't be seen and quantified that I want to know more about. And then that's when John started hitting me with all of this information and all of these links and all of these books. So I started diving down that rabbit hole, which was something completely new to me. So I started with the mind. What was it called? The Teachings of the Buddha by how do you say his name?
Eknath Easwaran.
Yep. And then The Vortex by Abraham Hicks, and then Bringers of the Dawn. And then that's when I started going down like the yogic rabbit hole. So like the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the Upanishads, things like that. And then a lot of podcasts related to spirituality. Aubrey Marcus was a huge influence for me. I will never forget the quote that he said. He said, there's two ways you can go into the unknown. You can have faith or you can have fear. And I really contemplated on that, because I'm not gonna lie, the first time I started meditating, I was scared as shit, because I'm like sitting there and I'm like going in these circular motions, and I could feel like this pillar of like energy holding me upright. It was like almost like magnetized, and I'm like, something is happening here, and I'm receiving these downloads and this information, but I can't explain it with my mind, I can't put it into words. So what is it,
And especially when you're having those experiences and you don't know what they are, nor do you know how to explain them. You can't just go like to your homie and be like, hey dude, so I had this like orgasmic experience of light exploding out the top of my head. Like most people just are afraid to even broach this subject with people, and that's why I like having conversations that are practical about things esoteric, to show people that like this isn't new stuff, guys. I mean, I got books on this shelf in here of shit that people would call like black magic. This is old stuff, like people have been practicing meditation and energy work for a really long time. The more you have a judgment and a bias about it, the more you should likely observe why that triggers you and what you really know about it, because usually when we get triggered, it's about something that we're not that educated on, and when we find out what the other perspective is that we lack, we come to a more understanding and more balanced perspective about these subjects. So I just wanted to highlight that, because it comes to a point down the road in your spiritual journey where spiritual is like this is everything is spiritual, everything's connected to that same energy source. And so these experiences that people would call spiritual or out of body or whatever, paranormal, they're just everything's paranormal, guys. Are you kidding me? Like, you see how this shit is put together? Fucking wild, right? So demystifying the woo-woo of like, oh, levitation or whatever, like, yeah, guys, cymatics, like, it just, there's books and there's stuff, and people have been tinkering with this shit for thousands of years. You don't think there's something to any of this? Come on, right? Like, go study ancient Egypt or on and on and on. Any of the cultures where they have megalithic structures, there's stuff there to digest. And so I'd like to really have people like, oh, I had a personal experience. Talk about it. What was that personal experience? Because someone else might have had a similar experience and be like, I'm fucking crazy. I'm absolutely bonkers. I must have hallucinated. Maybe I took too much of my meds. I don't know. And then they hear someone else who is, a practiced meditator or did some psychedelic experience, and they hear something relevant to them is like, oh, okay, I'm not weird. Okay, like, this is normal. And normalizing these kinds of conversations, I think, is very important for our generation, because this is a technology. This is a science, the science of realization. Becoming aware of what is real within yourself. it's a science, guys. Like, it's a technology that you can utilize. There's a process that you can follow. There's many processes that you can follow. But to realize that you're not crazy by following your intuition and having these perhaps in the beginning unusual experiences, it's just a part of the game. Don't judge yourself for that. Don't hide that from others. Try to find people, and this is why the importance of a teacher was so relevant in the previous ages, because you needed somebody to go to and to help you understand these experiences. Now the beauty of the internet is you can go look stuff up real quick and real easy. You can find teachers online. You don't necessarily have to go practice with them in person, but to have a structure and a framework to help reaffirm to you that you're on the right path and to bring you confidence that you're not absolutely crazy is, I think, very, very important for people to understand, and to save them a lot of the struggle in the beginning. Just to find a path. I love the way Ido Portal explains this. Johan, you'll appreciate this. He says, find a teacher. Don't worry about what they teach you. That's not the important part. It's the teacher that you're studying, because the teacher embodies the teaching. So by spending time with the teacher, you'll learn what they teach, but you'll also learn how they teach it. And that is the key. That is the humanities. That is the art of coaching, like Miles and I talked about. That is mastery, is being able to articulate it in different ways. And that's something that just comes through direct experience, personal experience, practice, right? And so having a teacher allows you to bounce those ideas off and go back and forth. And like for myself, just as an example, fortunately, not unfortunately, fortunately, I didn't really have a teacher on my spiritual path. And there's, my own story about that. I've kind of, my own teacher has really been my heart all along. And so that is everybody's greatest teacher. Your guru is your heart. Your intuition is the divine intelligence that permeates all things, including you. So it has the answers for you now and for all things. So you're good. It's all good. Connect to that. But if you don't have that teacher to give you that little nugget of like, okay, I'm not fucking bonkers, then you can get caught in a rabbit hole, or performing a practice it's just like exercising without perfect form. Like if you're doing an exercise just slightly wrong, if you don't have a coach to be like, hey, move your knee out a little bit, oh my god, my knee doesn't hurt anymore, feel it in my glute, totally different movement. Hey, tuck in your belly button, bring your ribs down a little bit, oh my god, that's way harder. Whatever it is, those little subtle cues. It's the same thing with anything, right? And, spirituality and meditation and yoga and connection and whatever it is, really healing trauma at the end of the day is deconditioning, which is removing the layers. And then, from that point of dissolution of self, from that point of emptiness, of void, of empty equanimity, really, then you can consciously choose how to rebuild. You unzip and step out, and then you start to rebuild it from there. You get that chance to always come back and change it however you want. Always go back to the drawing board once you can come from a point of emptiness, essentially, which is the process of yoga, is union. You get rid of yourself so you can connect to the all that's really there too all the time. Once you let go of yourself, then you can make that connection. But Buddhism, is a strong practice in no self, getting to that point of selflessness. And I mean, nirvana, the Brahma, samadhi, whatever you want to call it, that connection, source intelligence, the infinite creator, God, whatever name that you have for it, it's really irrelevant, because it's still trying to encapsulate and quantify and construct something that's outside of perception, so we can't actually grab it. There's nothing actually there for us to and so that's why it sounds different for everybody. But hearing each person's individual story allows you to make some more sense of the bigger picture in some way, and having a teacher to bounce your stories off of will help you like, hey, yeah, that sounds great, yeah, ooh, that's a story, don't get attached to that, that's the mind loves to, well, no, I get it now, let me attach to, no, it's right here, no, let me identify it, now I'm at peace, and comfortable and safe because I know what this is. But the second you try to this, it becomes other. It becomes separate from the self. When this exists, that means the perceiver is separate from it for it to exist. And so there's that process of understanding that your mind is trying to attach to some story. And if you have a spiritual experience, there could be many beautiful lessons in that, but also it's not necessarily the story that you want to hang on to. It's the experience from the story that then potentially, hopefully, inspires you further with action in your future and brings you to a new story. And that's the game, is then there's an infinite amount of stories instead of having to relive the same chapter over and over and over and over. I love the story about the two monks. There's an old monk and a young monk, and they're walking in the woods, and they reach a river. And this woman's in a nice fancy dress, and she's on her way to a birthday party down at the church, and she can't get across the river without getting her dress wet. And so the monks look at each other, and they have a vow of celibacy, so if either of them touch her, then they break their vow, which is against their religion. So the old monk, he asked the lady, hey, I'll put you on my shoulder and carry you across the river. And the young monk looks over at the old monk like, are you serious right now? And so he does, carries her over. She says, thank you so much, you just made my day. I'll let everyone know at the wedding or birthday party, wherever she was going. And the young monk looks at the old monk afterwards, and he goes, I can't believe you just did that. You just broke the vow. And the old monk just smiles. And then an hour later, they're walking, and the young monk looks at him, and he goes, I still can't believe you put that lady on your shoulder and carried her across the river. And he said, I put her down at the other side of the riverbank. You're the one that's still carrying her. And that is that idea that we just continue to take that story and allow the mind to let it fester into something greater than it really is. And, you know, if we, A, don't express these stories within ourselves, they can fester within us. And if we, B, don't have a structure or an environment or a space, Henosis Online Men's Retreat, all right? This is Henosis Academy, and this is the idea. We're creating a space for you guys. If you don't have a space to bounce those ideas off and to connect with other people that might be having similar experiences and to be able to share those experiences. I love the idea that every person has a story. Every story can heal. And every story, or heal or teach, so everybody has the potential to heal or teach somebody something, in the sense that their story can be inspirational, it can be educational, it can be relative to that other person, whatever it is, you never know. And so being open and sharing these things, normalizing spiritual experiences, whatever it is, like that we have to get to a point where we can have normalized conversations about these things if we want to start to understand more about ourselves and about the world and about reality at large. And by entertaining these ideas, then we can bring them into more of the commonplace conversation and into mainstream science, and we can start to do more tests on some of these things, like in the realm of quantum physics and in the realm of consciousness, and seeing how those things are starting to more and more merge together, where spirit and science are really talking about the same thing from potentially just different perspectives. And so the more we can have those conversations about that, the better. And so I really just want to emphasize that to all of you guys watching. Own your story and express your truth, whatever it may be, and don't be ashamed of that. Don't be guilty or ashamed of your story, even if it's different, because likely other people are feeling the same way you are, but they're scared to step out of line. And so by you sharing your voice, you encourage others to do that too. And that's how we heal, guys, by coming together and come together and kumbaya. Like that's really all we need to do at this time, is to share our experiences with each other and hold that space for the other, so we can continue to grow together. And that's the whole point of this, with this container, is to allow you guys to have that space to be able to be vulnerable and open yourself up to these potential experiences that could be life-changing. They might benefit you, like in the example of Ryan, and myself included, where there's certain moments in your journey that are pivotal transformational moments. And Tony Robbins talks about this a lot too. Yeah, things change over periods of time, but there's moments, instantaneous moments, where something switches. And something that is a big one for a lot of people is pain. They cross their pain threshold, the catharsis, right? You have such an extreme degree of suffering that you break, you give up, you surrender, you die essentially. You are ready and willing to change in whatever way you need to. That pain is so strong that it wakes you up to that desire to do something different, whatever it may be. You're just willing to try anything at that point. And the whole idea of these practices is you can get there without having to go through that rock bottom suffering. Not that suffering is bad in a sense. I'm not judging suffering, because it can be one hell of a teacher and give you a lot of lessons, but also you can learn those lessons in different ways if you choose to, and the practices can be a way for you to do that without necessarily having to go through so much time and effort to find out who you are. You know, these practices will help give you a little bit of that framework, those training wheels to guide you down that path that is really the path that you're already on anyway, is discovering yourself. Know thyself by Lao Tzu. I love that quote because it so encapsulates the process of going within. Your know thyself in entirety. You know, I looked for myself and only found God. I looked for God and only found myself. Like, the whole universe is within you. So just understand that these practices are an opportunity to save you some of that potential suffering and get you individually to where you want to be anyway. So that way, if we all can start to do that collectively, we can then have a different expression in society. Ryan feels better and healthier, goes to work, makes an impact on ground level floor of people that he works with. If everybody does that, imagine, you know, if everybody didn't go to work trying to pick a fight because they just felt like shit, because of shit that is just in there that they just haven't gone into yet. And so if everybody just made the decision to, all right, I'm just going to stop being distracted out here and go in and start digging on some shit that I've swept under the rug for God knows how long, each and every one of us, then we can start to shift the way that we express ourselves in the outside world. If we can start to look at within, it will change the way that we engage without. And if we all stop picking fights and trying to find those little things to just because, and if we all just said, okay, what are we going to do today? What can we do today? What can I do today? How can we serve today? How can we make change today? How can we create a positive impact today in the smallest way, whatever it is? But if just everybody just showed up with that attitude, you don't need a bunch of, you know, like all the technology and all that. Like, we have the science and the technology to make drastic change now. It's on the people to show up and actually implement the change. So that's something that is really the concept of the leader of one, is go within and do the work that will allow you to express yourself in a more positive and constructive and healthy way in the environment. And when you ask the question, how can I, little old me, make a difference? That right there is it. That's it. You show up in your community. You show up for your family. But you can only show up for others if you show up for yourself first. And that's doing the work. That's doing the practices. That's eating the real. And it doesn't have to be yoga, chicka. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be, I'm just going to go for a walk. I'm going to just plan some time for myself. I'm going to just to cook. I'm going to stop drinking soda. I'm going to start cooking a meal for my family every Friday night. We're going to have a family dinner together. Like, COVID's been a great example of how that's forced people to, like, well, I you know, a lot of people are like, damn, this is hard, but I actually am really enjoying it. I'm getting to spend more time with my family, and I get to, you know, be more of a participant in the process of watching my child grow up. And, you know, I get to be more engaged with what my kid learns. And, you know, I get to actually, you know, like, what little difference can I make? You're teaching your kids how to act for the rest of their life. Like, think about, this is a funny conversation to have. Think about us in this generation and how we were, and all people, right, in that early sensitive childhood development period, think about how much we were influenced by our parents. And potentially, not always, but potentially, we could have, through the process of conditioning, inherited by being in the immediate environment of and engaging with repetitiously, sounds like practice, right? We could potentially inherit some of the patterns and habits, thought processes, emotional associations, and values, moral values and beliefs as our parents, right? That makes a lot of sense. So when you say, how can I help today? Your actions now are literally creating who your kid's going to be at the age that you are now. So just think about that. Like, it's a clone of yourself, you know? Like, how you are now is going to influence how that kid is later. And if we all influence our kids in a more positive way now, then all the kids are going to have a more positive influence impact later. It really is that easy. Is if we work on ourselves. It's the same idea of grandmothers hold the eggs of the granddaughter when the mother is in, I think it's 4 months in utero at development period. The grandmother has her daughter in her stomach, and the daughter has the eggs for her daughter already created within her. And so that it's not just your kids, it's your grandkids. And then, you know, however much more, you know, they've shown with epigenetics, it can go 2 to 3, 4 sometimes, I think, generations of influence. So your genetic expression right now, say you're going to have a kid today, if you were to give yourself a 1 to 10 on unhealthy to healthy on 10 different parameters, right? What's your mobility like? What's your heart rate? What's your digestion quality? What's your strength? What's your stress levels? 1 to 10, all those, whatever that score is, when you conceive a kid, that's the DNA blueprint that is encapsulated in that sperm and in that egg that are essentially then like, okay, these are the building plans that we got. This is the blueprint that we got. So this is what we're going to use to build with. Like, it's really that simple of like, you influence your kids and your grandkids by the food that you eat and the movement or lack thereof that you do now. Like, that's wild to think about. That puts so much responsibility on us as the individual. Like, holy moly, if I'm going to have a kid, how many people out there are like, you know, I don't know, like, times are kind of tough and or whatever, you know. It's just like, yeah, maybe a kid would be a good idea to make our family stronger. It's like, hey, I'm sick. How about we make someone else sick, and maybe that'll make me healthier. Let's make a sick human like us, and maybe that's the same idea as something out here will make me better in here.
Yep.
You have to do the work yourself in here first, and like, that's the sole responsibility. That was a lesson that I got very early. It was like taking ownership. I had a very strong mentor in college that was like, suck it up, you little bitch. And I did. I did. And I was weak, guys. I'll tell this story. In high school conditioning, especially my freshman and sophomore year, I was like the kid like near tears at the end of the practice from conditioning. Probably because I was so fucking unhealthy from eating all the shit food I was eating. But I was so weak. I remember a cramp up. My low back would hurt all the time. And it took a year of that suffering to finally be strong and conditioned. Like, it was a lot of suffering. I was like the little bitch on the football team freshman, sophomore year. And then like finally I just tempered the steel enough to get to a point. But I sucked, guys. I sucked, and everybody sucks at a certain point. You have to come to that realization and just commit to doing work to change. And ideally, you can do that prior to hitting rock bottom and, you know, reaching a maximum threshold of pain that's so intense you have no other choice but to do something different. You can do that too. I did it. He did it. And it's not the worst thing that you could do per se, because there's a lot of lessons in that of what I don't want to do ever again, 100%. Which has made me who I am. But just bringing that back around of, you know, find somebody and find a space to do these practices, but realize that you have to have that desire first. It has to come from you first.
Absolutely.
So just to kind of bring this back around to where you are now, of like that you started to go, you know, from 0 to 100, and at that point, you know, deciding to be a holistic health coach, yoga and meditation were calling to you. You were starting to have non-ordinary experiences that were making you feel good and connected, and then information was coming in, and all these activations were happening to where you're like, do. It's like when Mario eats the mushroom and
Absolutely.
grows.
That's the best way I can describe it right there.
Mm-hmm.
Is when Mario eats the mushroom and you just level up. You're like, do. Like, that was every day. Still, every day, you know? And I remember reflecting on one of the conversations that we had. I'm like so excited, and I'm like telling John all these things, and our bi-weekly check-ins started coming to weekly check-ins, and we were spending 2.5, sometimes 3 hours on Zoom just chopping it up about what's going on. He was like, yeah, this is awesome, but this is just going to become normal soon. Like, these extraordinary experiences are just going to become ordinary experiences. And now it's like, it's an everyday thing, and it's not something that I even talk about openly. I'm not opposed to it, and I'll talk about it with anybody, but it went from me, John, guess what happened last night in meditation? It's just like, it's the same. It's not the same, but it's the same shit every day, you know, because it's just normal, because I'm so tuned in, tapped in, turned on now that I know who I am, you know, and it's just, I'm open to receive that information all the time. And I think that's just so beautiful. And that's what led me here. I was open to receive that information, and I just kept getting the downloads. And at the end of the day, it's just my higher self, you know, prodding me and encouraging me to follow my dreams and to serve others and to serve the collective. And I ended up coming here a little over a year ago, and with every intention on becoming a yoga teacher. And that's what I thought. Like you said, little old me, how can I help? You know, ex-alcoholic drug addict, who can I help? But it's like, I can help so many people who are afflicted by that same pain that I went through for so many years, that suffering that taught me to look inward instead of looking externally. You know, as soon as I got here, I took my RYT 200 here on Maui. Shout out to Jennifer Bonadio. You guys probably remember her from the couple interviews she did with John. Amazing teacher and influence on my life when I took my RYT 200. Now I am finishing up my RYT 300 with Jennifer Lynn at Wisdom Flow Yoga. Thank you, Jennifer. I love you so much. She has been an incredible teacher on my journey and supports me in so many different ways and is just a fountain of knowledge. Wisdom Flow is just the best way to describe her and what she does. And then I have John, who's been here with me the entire time and continues to push me and prod me. And sometimes I don't fucking like it, but it's what's best for me. And our relationship continues to grow and evolve. And, you know, at the end of the month, I'll be RYT 500, which is, you know, advanced yoga teacher. I mean, there's always more to learn, and that's just a certification or credential. You know, that doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day. It just means that I went through the program. But it's an accomplishment for me to look back on the past 2 years and say, damn, I came from rock bottom in the trenches. I could barely move. I was crawling out of bed. I was puking. I was sick. I was lethargic. I was suicidal. I was depressed. I hated my life. To now, it's like I can barely fucking sleep because I'm ready for the next day. I'm ready to get this going. I'm ready to build. I'm about to go teach a yoga class right now in a couple of minutes. Like, I'm stoked to take this energy that I have right now and share this with my students, you know? Like, I am teaching. I'm in the arena. I'm doing this, you know? And just to look back a couple of years, I was just sitting at a desk at a quote unquote, and I don't mean this in any offensive way, but a dead end job, you know, looking out of a window like, what the fuck am I doing with my life, to now looking at this beautiful ocean view here on Maui with my soul brother, teaching and being an uplifter for my community. It's like, if I can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. It just takes the desire, the will, and the devotion, and the consistency. You have to be consistent. And there's going to be days when you miss, but that's okay. You know, and the big thing for me is not being so dogmatic about my practices. Okay, I have to wake up at 5 a.m. and I have to sit for 1 hour in silence and do my Kriya and do my meditation, and I have to come down and I have to do everything in this exact order. It's like, no, you don't. And this retreat has been a huge eye-opener for me to see that you don't have to do things in such that linear pattern, as long as you just do them. Do them. It doesn't have to be right when you wake up. Yeah, you'll see for yourself, everybody's different. It's most optimal for me when I wake up and get my day started in that fashion. But as long as I do these practices or do some sort of practice throughout the day to keep me centered, grounded, and clear, that's all. It's consistency. Practice makes permanent. There's no perfection. We're never going to attain perfection. We're already perfect. It's just you never get it done, so you'll never get it wrong. And you keep trying and you keep doing. And after the doing comes the being. Less doing, more being. And now I am able to see the impact that I have on others by just being me, by just showing up for myself. Therefore, I'm showing up for others. One book that I'm reading right now is part of my curriculum for my teacher training. It's How Yoga Works by Geshe Michael Roach. Highly recommended for anybody who just wants to dive down that rabbit hole and be able to put a journey into a story and follow along with it. But it's me actually being able to see how yoga works in my circle and in my life by just being. Like, my mom is a great example. Since Zoom has taken off with these yoga classes, my mom joins my yoga class every week. She's been doing so consistently for about 2 months now. She has gotten a little journal. She's writing down all these yogic terms, writing down the definitions, going through the 8 limbs of yoga. She's doing the breath work. I called her yesterday. She's like, oh, I was just doing an 8-minute meditation on Gaia. I'm like, what? Like, she's doing, like, 71 years old, And it's just like, that is how yoga works. Less doing, more being. Just leading by example and being that beacon of light for everybody. And light attracts light. People are going to be drawn to that when they resonate with you. And instead of trying to open up this space and saying, everybody come here, you have to know this, it's just opening the space and sitting down. And whoever's drawn to it's drawn to it. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. When the student is really, really ready, the teacher will disappear. So it's just a beautiful journey that keeps evolving and is just continuing to allow me to grow and hold space and be present each moment of the day more and more and more. So I'm very, very grateful for you, John, like more than you know. And I am grateful for everybody who has been a part of this journey. My 2 Jennifers, I love you guys so much. And I'm just happy to be here. And to more growth and love and prosperity and abundance and well-being. And a big thing for me is just to reiterate something that was spoken last week when Jennifer Bonadio was here, is what you do matters. And just personal practice, showing up for yourself first, and then that allows you to show up for others organically.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different things that you can try. There's a lot of different practices that work. The main key is for you guys to just dedicate the time. It doesn't matter, like Ryan said, it doesn't matter the time of day. It doesn't have to be you have to do this at 4 and this at 5 and this at 6. Just dedicate a time during the day to yourself. When you step into that time and space of self, you can decide what you want to do with it. I want to breathe today. I want to sit today. Listen. Instead of trying to dogmatically force yourself into some disciplined routine of restraint, listen. But take the time to listen. Your body, your mind, your heart will over time continue to tune more and more and more, just like we've been doing with this whole retreat, tuning the instrument, right? We're trying to harmonize the mental, physical, and emotional bodies. The more time that you spend tuning the instrument, the more you'll naturally be guided to the practices that resonate with you the most, the teachers that resonate with you the most. But it's really just dedicating the time. And I love the example of 2.4 hours is 10% of your day. If you were to choose the top 10 most influential people in the world to you, and just in general successful / influential people, you could probably assume that they have a morning and an evening routine that they do every day, and you could probably assume it's about an hour long. And so if you were to take 2.4 hours out of your day, 10% of your day, the return on investment, you would be the top 10% performers in the world. It's just math at the end of the day, right? If you take 10% of your time to be the best self that you can be, you'll be the top 10% of the best selves there are, the most productive in your field of whatever you're choosing to spend that time to practice and learn about. And those things can always change, but dedicate the time. If you want to truly be a leader of one, you have to dedicate that time to practice being a leader. And the practice can vary, but take the time, dedicate yourself to the time and to the practice of just becoming better, becoming healthier, becoming happier. And if any of the tools that we use during the retreat serve you, then awesome. If not, awesome. There's a lot of other tools that you guys can use and try. But try them all, find out what works the best, play with it, make it yours, repeat. Okay, guys, that's all I got. Ryan's got to go teach class, and I'm going to cut this Facebook Live. Thanks for everybody tuning in. Please feel free to share it with anybody that you think it would resonate with, or tag your homies in the comments. And all of the fellas in the group, I will see you guys tonight for the closing ceremony. And we're going to do the AM routine prior to the closing ceremony. I'll run that Facebook Live, and then we'll do the closing ceremony together. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We appreciate you. We love you. We hope you guys are well. And if you guys ever have any questions about where to get started, you know where to find us.
Ooh.